Okay, so validation based protocol, that part we are going to study now. So execution of transaction. So when the transaction TI starts its execution in validation based protocol, it goes through 3 phases. What is the first phase? The first phase is read and execution phase. So during this phase, the system execute transaction TI. First, it reads the values of various data items, stores them in variable local to TI, and it performs all write operations on temporary local variable. Okay, on temporary local variable without updates to the database. Means what? In this read phase, so in this repeat, see when the transaction TI started execution, where the transaction actually execute, it execute in main memory. The database is stored on the disk, but the transaction or any instruction execute in main memory always. So when the transaction start its execution, a local area is generated for that particular transaction TI. We call it as a local area for this transaction, where the transaction store the data items temporarily. In this layer, local area, transaction store the data items temporarily. Okay. So what happens in the read phase? It reads the value of the various data items and store them in the variables local to TI. Means suppose we are doing a simple operation transfer $50 from account A to account B. So in that case, first I need to read the value of A, perform operation on it, then write the value of A, then read the value of B, add 50 to account B, and then write B. So these are the main 4 operations are performed on the data item A and data item B. So this data item A and the data item B are stored temporarily in the local area of the particular transaction. So we call these variables now local variables, or these data items are known as local variables. Normally it is represented with small letters. A as small a, B as small b. That part again we are going to see. So it reads values of various data items and stores them in the variable local to TI. Perform all write operation in the on the local variable, write A, write B, whatever perform on the local variable only, without updates to the actual database. Where the actual database is stored, the actual database is stored on the disk. All the updates, whatever read write operation, these are performed in this local area of the transaction without updates to the actual database. That is first read and execution phase. Now the second one, that is validation phase. So in validation phase, transaction TI performs a validation test to determine if local variables can copy to the database without violating the serializability, means not creating any inconsistency. If the transaction fails in the validation test, the system aborts the transaction or roll back that transaction. So in validation phase, what it performs? It check or perform the validation test whether the values which are written are correct or not. If these are correct, then only it is returned to the disk on the database. And if fails in this validation test, then the transaction is aborted or that is rolled back. Now here in this example, if initially it has 200 and it has 100, then what value it write? 150. 150 if transaction executed correctly. At the end, the value of A is 150 and the value of B is 150. Check whether it result in data consistency. Yes, it result in data consistency. The addition of both is 300. The addition of both is 300, means it result in data consistency. So in validation, it check whether these values generated by this transaction or written by this transaction are correct or not. Can we copy these values 150 of A and 150 of B to the disk where the database is actually stored? If yes, if validation test is successful, then at the last phase, that is write phase, this is returned to the disk. Okay. So the last phase is right phase. If Ti is validated, whatever the values of A and B here, whatever the values of local variables in the of the transaction in the main memory are correct, then the updates are applied to the database on the disk. Otherwise, Ti is rolled back. So it's a very simple kind of protocol. Is it clear to everyone, these three steps? Again, I am explaining read phase and execution phase. So during this phase, the system executes transaction Ti. It reads the values of various data steps and stored it in temporary variable, which are local to the Ti. It performs all write operation temporarily local variable without updating the actual database on the disk. Then it performs the validation test. Whether that values which are in the local variable correct. Can we copy it to the database on the disk? If yes, validation test is successful, then in the right phase, if it is validated, the updates are applied to the database on the disk. Otherwise, transaction Ti is rolled back. Is it clear to everyone? Yes or no? Okay. Now see, now these three pages means every transaction goes through all these three pages. Every transaction must go through all these three pages. We can interleave all these three pages that we are going to see. This validation based protocol is also known as optimistic concurrency control scheme. Now the next, how this validation based protocol actual works. So each transaction Ti has three timestamps. Okay, each transaction Ti has three timestamps. Start Ti means timestamp is used here. Start Ti. What it indicates? The time when Ti start its execution. For example, as in our T1, we transfer $50 from account A to account B. Account A to account B. So in that, when this transaction T1 starts, we assign a timestamp start Ti. Okay, start T1 in our case. The time when Ti finished its read phase and started its validation phase. So when it finished its read phase, first it read the value of A, perform minus operation there, write the value of A, then perform read, add 50 to account B, and then perform write B. But where it is perform everything means here it is start Ti. Where it is start Ti. All these operations are performed, these are performed on the local variables to the transaction, not actually performed or the updates are made to the database. So after this, it starts with the validation Ti, the time when Ti finished its read and execution phase and started its validation phase. So here it starts with the validation T1. Okay. So what it performs in validation, check whether the value of A which is returned to the local variable, these are correct or not. If these are correct, means it pass in validation test. It pass in validation test. Then the transaction transfer these values to the disk database which are stored on the disk. Then after completing this one, the values returned to the database. After completing this one, the finished Ti means what? The write operation is finished. Is it clear to everyone? It's a very simple concept. So this protocol is determined by timestamp order protocol and it gives the greater degree of concurrency because here we can interleave the two transactions. It is possible. So up to this, is it clear to everyone what is mean by validation based protocol? Yes or no? see how we can execute it concurrently. For that purpose, see here, we have already assigned the timestamp start Ti when the transaction started read and execution phase. When it complete read and execution phase, then validation Ti means start its validation test. Once validation is completed and all the updates are made to the database, then finish Ti. Now, if for all Ti with TSTi is less than TSTj, what it indicates? Ti enters into the system before Tj. What it indicates that? Ti enters into the system before Tj. So either one of the following condition holds. Finish Ti less than start Tj. What it indicates? Anyone? Whether it is a concurrent execution or serial execution? Finish Ti before start Tj. Anyone? What it indicates? Serial execution or concurrent execution? Serial or concurrent execution, it is finish Ti is less than start Tj. It is serial execution. It is serial execution. Means what? First complete the entire transaction Ti. Updates are made to the database. Finish Ti. Completes everything. And then start Tj. Then start the read and execution of transaction Tj. Means for example, suppose we are executing this transaction T25 and T26. So in that case, first complete T25 entire. So first complete T25 entire and then go for T26. Okay. So it is a serial execution. Finish Ti and then start Tj. If we want to perform the concurrent execution, then what we can do? Start Tj is less than finish Ti is less than validation Tj. Means what? Here we can start the transaction Tj, its read and execution phase, which are applied to the local variables of the transaction before finish Ti. Means Ti is performing its write to the database. At the same time, we can perform read and execution phase of Tj. But we cannot start the validation until it finishes. First, we need to finish the entire transaction Ti and then goes for validation of Tj. What purpose it is? The set of data items which are written by Ti. In finish Ti, what it performs? Writes that all data items to the database which are stored on the disk. So the data items which are written by this Ti does not intersect with the set of data items read by Tj. And Ti complete its write phase, means this finish Ti before Tj start its validation phase. Then validation succeed and both transactions are completed successfully. Then validation complete and both transactions are completed successfully. See once again, if finish Ti is less than start Tj, then it's a serial execution. First we complete the transaction Ti entirely and then we start with the transaction Tj. But if we want to do it concurrently, execute it concurrently, we can do in this way. Start Tj before finish Ti. But we cannot start validation before it's finished. Means first we finish Ti and then start validation of Tj. Now see it with example. So this example is here. Okay. So in this example T25, which read the value of B and A and display A plus B. And in transaction T26, it read the value of B, read the value of A, transfer $50 from account B to account A. Initially, we consider B to A. A is equal to 100 and B is equal to 200. So it start with this transaction. Now check whether this concurrent execution is result in data consistency. So it read the value of B. What is the value of B? What is the value of B it reads? It reads the value 200. Then here we can say start T25. Start its read and execution phase. Where all these values are written, it is written, suppose this is transaction T25 and this is its local area. When it starts its execution, it creates its own local area and here it read the value of B, that is 200. Here it start with transaction T26. It read the value, so transaction T26 has its own local area. It read the value of B. What is it? It is 200. Okay. Then B is equal to B minus 50. It read the value of A. A is equal to 100. Okay. Where it is? It is in the local area of T25, local area of T26. Then it make a context which goes here. Read the value of A. What is the value of A it reads now? Anyone? What is the value of A it reads now? 100 or 200? 150. What is the value of A it reads? 100 or 150? Fast, I need response. What happens? Saurabh, 150, 150, 150. No, it's wrong. Whether it performed the right operation here, this transaction T26? No. So Shubham, it's correct. It not perform any right operation, only read. Whatever the operation it perform in the local variable of the transaction, which are not returned to the database. When it perform the right operation after validation. So here it only perform the read operation. So whatever the value of A, it remains as it is. And here it read, 100. Here it read 100. Have you got? So here it read 100 because the right operation is not performed here and that's why it read the original value of A. Now A is equal to 100. He start with its validation phase. In validation, what it perform? Check whether it result in data consistency, whether these are correct operation values. Yes, these are correct values. These are correct values. So display A plus B, which is 300. And then here finish T25. Here it finished T25. After it finished T25, then only start with the validation of T26 and then it write the values which are updated here 150 and 150 to the disk. Okay, where the actual database is stored. A is equal to 150, B is equal to 150. And once this write operation is completed, it finish